healthcare system. If we leave aside all the technical or medical aspects, this had an impact on all of us. Besides the biological direct impact, we had the impact on our micro communities, how we live our lives, what our lives look like actually, regardless the stressor. If another healthcare challenge occurs, I believe that everything we can learn from the experience we've lived at global levels, I believe all these lessons should be very much available for international organizations, for countries, for EU institutions. This approach enjoyed lots of time and energy allocated to look at the lessons learned, what worked, replicate, what didn't work, find solutions. And I give you an important example. At European level, we have HERA, an important agency dealing with such questions, such matters to manage crisis situations, healthcare crises, supply chain crises, to ensure autonomy. And this is one of the important lessons in this crisis situations, which was implemented. Eventually, we want to live in a modern country which is always competitive and comparable with other countries, whether European and North American. For this to happen, I believe we need to prioritize this paradigm shift, to look at what worked and replicate them, to look at what solutions we have available, to look at how we can work as a team and try to allocate time for this, even though it may not seem personally interesting and important. To think at what was difficult, what worked, what didn't work. This is crucial. If we if we think how to learn from these experiences, in my viewpoint, that means an increase of the resilience capacity.
Thank you very much. Indeed, the lessons learned should have consequences and should generate consequences. Let's see if Mr. ARAFAT can join us now. If not, before giving the floor to the next speaker, we should think about the shock of the health system or Dr. ARAFAT. So after the shock with COVID, do you think that the health system has some lessons learned? And are we prepared for another challenge? Not necessarily this kind of challenge. Can you hear me now? Yes, we can hear you very well. We did hear you before, not now. Unfortunately, we cannot hear you anymore. So this is quite a kind of crisis situation. We, as a panel, should demonstrate that we are able to take over this shock. We can have a flexible schedule. So, yes, we prefer to be flexible rather than receive this shock in a frontal hit. Thank you. It's an honor for me to be in this panel with you today. It's maybe for the third or fourth time near Minister ARAFAT. Even now he's participating remotely. And I say this as an argument to what I'm going to say. I would like to speak about lessons learned from the pandemics. So in the few minutes I have available, I'd like to start with an information from the background, from the level 2 during the pandemic's period. where the information system were used during the crisis. If you remember, when the crisis occurred, I have no competence to speak from a medical point of view, but access to hospitals was no longer possible. And those who were inpatient had to keep in touch with their families. So suddenly, physicians had to be moved from one hospital to another. Some hospitals were dedicated to COVID cases, others not. There were new pathways in the hospital, and some units have changed, which meant a nightmare in the IT system, changing users and passwords overnight, creating new users and passwords overnight, and bringing new equipment and installing them in the hospital's IT systems, and especially installing this new equipment in a fast-forward way, because statistics were making us crazy with COVID cases and all the other issues we faced then. So all that effort had to be done by people. I'm sorry to speak about something. I'm sorry to have to speak about something that is related more to the health system rather than to cybersecurity. But again, this effort had to be done by people from the statistics offices in hospitals, who, in addition to their responsibility, are also in charge with IT. And in many cases, they are not experts in cybersecurity. So they had to find solutions for these problems. Maybe the first lesson learned here was that we are no longer able to do without IT systems, and digitalization is not a desire, but it is a must in any field. And we also learned one more thing, maybe the second conclusion derived from the first one, that if we don't do these things in a secure way, then all the good things that we were going to do, or the physicians wanted to do for their patients, could be exploited by ill-intentioned people, which actually happened, who could get access to patients' data. Do you have also a brief presentation? Yes, I do. And I'm used from the previous editions. So maybe what the minister has to say is more important. So okay, thank you for your understanding and flexibility. And let's try again to get in touch with Mr. ARAFAT. Can you hear me through the phone or through the video conference system? Through the phone. But we can't hear you very well. So let's keep with the phone. So first of all, good morning or good afternoon, and thank you for the invitation. I would like to underline some aspects about the health system and its resilience, and the way how we could say that the system could be improved. We discuss about reducing disaster risks. This is what the United Nations reunion says about this. 2 days ago, at the meeting of the managers for public protection in Europe, we have discussed this topic. We noticed the following aspects. First of all, we identified a lot of lessons. And I say we identified, not that we learned such lessons. We consider that lessons are learned when solutions are available. So identifying lessons should be followed by implementation solutions. And I'll give one example. We were not prepared for the pandemics. We know this very well. There were several areas where we were not prepared. One of them was the area of making inventory stocks of health consumables that we should have in our stocks. During the pandemics, we started to fill these stocks. Normally, after the pandemics, the stocks should be refilled, completed, and of course, arranged not just for pandemics, but also for other situations. For instance, before the pandemics, in the joint health group at the NATO, we were speaking about preparing for 1,000 people who need rapid intervention in a certain time interval. Now we recommend between 5,000 and 10,000 people that would need to be served. Now, looking at Romania and what happened during the last period, we noticed that first of all, some of the Romanian society does not accept. It's not just that we are not prepared, but they also don't accept that we need solutions that cost money to be better prepared. When auditors came and they write in the reports that they found stocks in your warehouses, and this means that the expense was not justified because the inventories should be empty. This is the opposite of preparedness. Does it mean that if a new situation arises, it should find us with empty warehouses and we should start again to run after consumables, materials, equipment, and everything to prepare? Based on the mathematical analysis for the next 20 to 50 years, in case a new pandemic may arise, for the next 50 years, there is an analysis which says that there is a 50% chance. For the next 10 years, there is a 20% chance of a new pandemic arising. But the problem is that we should not prepare just for pandemics, but also for other cases, such as collective accidents or conflict, unfortunately, because we are at the border of a conflict, of a war, and nobody knows how this war will evolve. So the sanitary system after the pandemic should go through a transformation, through a thorough transformation. As I said, first of all, preparedness, which means funding preparations, and it means to prepare in due time, although these are investments that may not be used at a certain point. For instance, you should have antidotes on stock, but if you don't use these antidotes in 2 years, you have to destroy them. Does it mean that it was a wrong investment? No, it's like an insurance. It's like we paid an insurance, and luckily, we did not need it. If we were to use this principle that we pay something that we don't use, it means that we wasted the money. This would mean to never insure our cars because the likelihood of an accident is low. But if we have an accident, then costs would be very high if we have no insurance. The same applies to stock of medicine and materials that should be made available in time, prepared in time, which means that we invest in them. Then we should look at another aspect, namely the dependency. We've seen how dependent we were on other regions outside Europe because we didn't have what we needed here, at least for some materials. We had to import masks and overalls. Many other equipment had to be brought from abroad, and not from Europe or the Euro-Atlantic, but even from areas where, in cases of potential conflict, we may not get anything from those areas, and we might be dependent only of what we have here. So this means we should work to strengthen the European and Euro-Atlantic industry and to create connections with areas we can rely on for obtaining materials and equipment. Dear Minister, we are very sorry that we are pressed by time and we should leave at least 5 minutes for discussions. So we need to hurry a little to have time for questions. We wish you good luck with that conference and thank you. So yes, we wanted to leave some time for questions. Following the discussions with our speakers, it's obvious that we were subject to some events during the COVID pandemics, and we continue to be subject to some events. And it appears we have not learned our lessons yet, because we still need to make plans and some transformations. It's obvious that we need to have very clear plans. We've spoken a lot about health system, but as regards society and as a whole and media, the physicians, the health system and their interface with society is important. Cybersecurity is also crucial because you need to have a plan B regarding security. The pandemics was not the only element, but it was a shock that made us think about other potential force majeure cases for which we should be prepared. And following what Mr. BACIU said, that we should start to work in teams, I think from as early as the University of Medicine studies, we should learn to work together to develop health humanities and learn to have a better interface with society. Any questions from the audience? I have a question regarding the National Recovery and Resilience Plan and the opportunities for health it brings. I suppose I am the recipient of this question, inevitably. So you mentioned something very important, because when you speak about large systems that depend on technology and infrastructure, such as health, you cannot benefit from what medicine offers you on the street or in a hotel. That's why we have hospitals, and we have lots of types of medical services given within different facilities. In order to have hospitals as abroad, we need infrastructure, we need equipment that cost a lot, because medicine is a field where innovation changes the rules almost every day. We hear every day about new drugs, new technologies, new equipment that bring exceptional results. For this, you need money, you need significant resources. If we compare what happens in Romania to what happens in other countries, we think maybe, yes, we would like to have hospitals like in any other European country or the US. Have you any idea how much money is allocated in these countries to see what we see there in terms of hospitals? A rough example, but relevant one. The GDP allocations, we allocate about 6%. The European average is 9%, and there are countries that allocate almost double. Germany and France allocate almost 12% of their GDP. Can you imagine what the difference means? No matter how good we are at managing limited resources, you cannot have the same results with half of the resources of other countries. For this reason, the NRRP comes as a historical opportunity for Romania to allocate unprecedented resources for health. Why? Why unprecedented? Because we speak about 2.8 billion euro that have already been injected in the health system. and they are not allocated to things that are not visible, things that require structural changes. No, most of this money is allocated to developing infrastructure and also for resilience and mechanisms for resilience. I want to add something, namely that the NRRP is built with targets and benchmarks, which means that you need a plan, as the name says, the National Plan for Recovery and Resilience, but it also contains an implementation formula for this plan to increase your chances to meet objectives. How? By periodical monitoring, almost monthly, but for sure quarterly. You know for sure if you are on the right pathway or not, because if not, then you have time and you can make adjustments ongoing. You don't discover one day before that you have a few months delay which cannot be overcome. This requires a very careful planning to reach some ambitious results to structural changes in the system. So there are several billion euro from NRRP for health. Then there will be the future operational program health that will also bring some billion euro. And then we have important discussions with international institutions for this. And all this will happen during the next years. And all this will go to infrastructure. This means that we won't see all new hospitals or renovated hospitals, but where needs are highest, we'll see new hospitals, renovated wards, or new buildings within certain hospitals. We'll see hospital infrastructure with equipment.
NRRP brings something different because financial allocations and reimbursements are conditioned by finalized works. That means pragmatism. Look at what you have already prepared and allocate money to mature projects which can be finalized within 3 years by the end of 2026. So within 3 years you need to have a turnkey hospital, a turnkey project. There are many examples in Romania where people have been working to develop out of a natural willingness to do things better. They did their best, but further we need investments, tens, maybe hundreds of millions of euro, which cannot be found elsewhere. So in my viewpoint, NRRP, this is what NRRP means, both for the healthcare system and for all other fields. It is a leap in the future. It is a chance for Romania to take a leap to the future and to develop according to the EU priorities. In several years, EU priorities will be different, and unless we use now these resources to close the gap, this gap we have compared to other more developed countries will increase, and priorities Europeans will have will be something way too sophisticated for us. So long story short, it is a historical chance for Romania to align with European standards at least. Thank you very much. If you have any other questions. Well, if not, yes, we want to live up to European standards, and we will have digitalization in the healthcare system. So maybe it will be a good idea to return to the field of security and admit that digitalization has both advantages and disadvantages. How can we protect ourselves? What can we do? Getting back to cybersecurity. Thank you very much. In line with your question and with the previous question on NRRP, I know it is more important, and I fully agree when we are talking about NRRP. It is important to see the public institutions' opinion, but long story short, from a private company's viewpoint, that is a challenge because I'm afraid we learned nothing. I'm afraid we will have lots of procurement in hospital and no sustainability, no maintenance, and within some years we will be facing cyber threats we did not think about when we purchased. I was talking to someone and they were saying, how can I develop a security structure when I don't have positions in my in the structure of my institution? And okay, then why do you develop this? Then just think what would happen in a telemedicine surgery if the connection was like the connection we had with Mr. ARAFAT today. Just to go through slides. Those who want to hear, well, I cannot provide solutions. I can only give you the viewpoint of a person who has had contracts with more than 15% of the Romanian hospitals in the past 3 years for cybersecurity. Next slide. So, I complied with the organizer's requirement to have slides in English. In my viewpoint, even though I can be accused of being subjective, the solution for cybersecurity is not. With companies which are probably not interested in, with large companies which are not interested in the Romanian security market, which I believe is about 15-20% in terms of payment capacity compared to the Western market. Second, the hospitals in Romania are so specific that it is absolutely impossible to have them match other requirements. So services provided by agile companies which want to protect hospital digital infrastructure, well, they should cover at least the services you see on the slide, because otherwise we speak of things we cannot afford. They need to do asset management, see what they have in the hospital, at least vulnerability management. They need to patch those vulnerabilities they identify. We always find volunteers to identify them, post them on the internet. But guess what? Does anyone use them afterwards? Yes, to exploit those vulnerabilities. And indeed, without a trained team, you cannot perform incident management for way too many reasons. We need common standards and certifications, and I have here several certifications I have in my team. I managed to bring together this expertise, thinking that we will be able to check after a while. It is difficult, however, to believe that such certifications can be found not only in a hospital in Romania but across the world, because these are cybersecurity certifications that enable users to provide quality cybersecurity services. In Romania, we have many very small companies providing cybersecurity services to whom? To the operators, essential services operators. Why? Because no one asked them, can you bring proof that you are using this or that technology, common technologies they should be using every day in service provision, beyond the fact that they have a company and a person who is able to identify vulnerabilities and audit these vulnerabilities in hospitals. We know we have problems and do nothing to solve them. We just identify new vulnerabilities. We have hospitals which are evaluated. I mean, we have hospitals. We have contracts with hospitals because we do not own hospitals. So we provide cybersecurity, and they are evaluated by the National Agency for Quality Management in Healthcare. So When they go to audit the hospital and the hospital says we have services, we comply with the law, what can you check? Do you have certifications? Those certifications should also apply for this audit. Similarly, affordable security, common standards. There are all sorts of very, very expensive certificates that we cannot afford. If we only include them in the requirements, we only open the gate for large foreign companies to provide services. I know we are in a hurry. I know there are questions about the digitalization programs. I was saying from the viewpoint of a cybersecurity company, this is a challenge. Not all digitalization projects have a cybersecurity component. Unfortunately, for objective reasons, those who draft the terms of reference rely on needs. The doctor says, I need this device. The device is purchased, but it is not up to the doctor to ensure or request cybersecurity requirements. When it is connected, that device without cybersecurity elements becomes vulnerability, an element in that enlarged attack area. These are beneficial elements, but they don't only come with opportunities, but also with threats. When I was in Brussels during the Romanian presidency of the Council of the European Union, the rapporteurs of the European Parliament was saying, Daniel, unless you understand that the money go to SMEs, you will not get money from the EU. Stop talking about the state and the large corporate. In EU vision, the SMEs are the only ones able to bring innovation. You are perfectly right. And besides the security of systems in hospitals, well, now we all know we have the patient electronic case file so that everywhere they go, we have the patient file. Everything we try as doctors in our relationship with patients is to create programs, advice, diet, nutritional programs, and to be able to send them to our patients by phone. Of course, that also has threats associated, but we are trying to do our best and communicate with many patients at the same time, save time. Thank you very much. Thank you for allowing me to finalize my presentation. Thank you. We only have 3 more minutes. One brief question, please. In most regions in the country, we have digital innovation centers. At least in Constanța, for example, the center managed by the Ovidius University, it does have a cybersecurity component. So my question is, how do you see their role as possible solutions to provide support to companies? How can we work together for better solutions? Just 10 seconds. Very easy and straightforward. I'm very proud of the Ovidius University. I graduated there, my bachelor degree. But for the Maritime University in Constanța, we accredited a study program on the topic, and we had the same questions. I would like my operators in the company, when they graduate, I would like them to know how to scan, not what the scanner is, to be able to apply the definition, not only recite the definition. So maybe this is the only efficient way of transferring academic knowledge to private companies, those technology transfer unit, to deliver innovative services developed in the research development centers. It is what we are trying to do with the Center of Excellence of the Maritime University. Well, there is a place for anyone under the sun, but we should give up believing in utopia. We should not believe we will have 600 experts in cybersecurity in hospitals. We won't, and we should not believe the state can do everything in the field of cybersecurity because the state won't be able to. I'm talking from my experience. I was at some point a manager with the National Authority for Cybersecurity. When I thought things were possible, it wasn't. Not without the support of the private companies. Thank you very much. Very challenging session indeed. I had the honor of having with me two ministers, state secretaries, and an expert in cybersecurity. We had lots of technology difficulties, but we have a clear solution or conclusion. The fact that we went through a pandemic and we are near a war. We have threats and strengths. Everything we need to change in our societies does not have to be centralized. Everything related to hospitals, the culture of new communication, interdisciplinary communication between the healthcare system and society, and strictly at local territorial levels. As I mentioned, it's good to develop SMEs to be able to produce healthcare materials in Romania and become independent in certain fields of activity. It's important to encourage and develop small hospitals in regions where it is very possible, in case of a force majeure situation, to require healthcare services in such a small locality. Thank you very much.